heads of department, administration, and other members of the Qatar Academy community. I'm here today to speak about the gifted and talented and ESL differentiation within our school at Qatar Academy. There's three things that I would like to talk about today. First of all, major needs that our community and our school have for Qatar Academy children. Secondly, in class, a rationale and organization for differentiated classrooms that can respond to these three major demographics that are in need of our focus in our school, at least as a preliminary focus. And finally, after-school activities that all teachers can focus upon to make certain that we are differentiating for children and helping each of them to reach the highest levels that they are currently capable of achieving. Now, Qatar Academy has made significant growth in the time that I've been at the school, in the 7 years that I've been a teacher at Qatar Academy. When I first arrived, we had no real formal policy of any sort. We had no probation policy and few support systems. Then we moved into an elitist stage, which I know heads of the administration have said is probably a crucial stage to getting us to where we are in terms of our reputation and our academic level as a school. However, we did exit a great many pupils who could not make it, and certainly it was not an inclusive model, and did build up some angst which we recognized within parents and students. So now we've moved on to an inclusive model as a school. We now have an academic support system instead of a probation policy. We have child study teams. We have a differentiation coordinator coming in next year. And we bolstered our ESL and counseling departments significantly in just a couple years. So we have many of the pieces that we need to be an inclusive school. But how do we use those pieces? And what are some things that everyday teachers working with these experts can now do to help support our children? Now, first of all, I'd like to talk about the three major demographics that we'd be focused on initially. And of course, eventually, we'd like to be able to differentiate for every child with every need that they have. But these are our first steps, I feel, where we have systematic support on a whole school level where we can start to target our largest audiences. First of all, we have struggling language learners, and I use this term to label any of the students, according to ELL expert and doctoral candidate Misti Savage-Shepherd, who have no strong mother tongue or dominant language. I'm going to explain this further because I think it bears further explanation, because if we cannot identify the problem, we can't help to support it. But this, as we all have spoken of, is probably our largest demographic in terms of need and support. Our second demographic are students with a variety of needs, but no identified special need that requires consistent major support right now. Now, as we move into looking at other types of learning disabilities and areas that we can support students in, this will be a target area for later on. But for right now, this is the one group I'm not going to speak a great deal about today. Finally, we're going to be looking at the new gifted and talented students, which have been identified in grades 4 through 6 this year, and will continue up into the senior school, with grades 6 and 7 having TAP, as we have called them in the school, or gifted and talented students, who are identified and must start to have our support. So these, number 1 and number 3, are the two areas that I'd like to focus upon today. In terms of the ELL students at Qatar Academy, they're a very unique type of ELL student. Many of our students enter our school at the primary level and do not have a well-founded mother tongue in Arabic. This is generally because they have only conversational Arabic. Now, I'm also quoting a number of different Arabic language experts within our school to form this opinion, but I feel that this is spot on, and it's something that we have to recognize as a school. This is a large part of our demographic. In fact, Qatari Arabic in general is seldom in a written form for our children to look at. There are no readily available books, although students could look at each other's writing. The form of Arabic that is most generally used in written Arabic is classical Arabic, much like, for those who know English, much like William Shakespeare's classical English. It is very different than the colloquial, the daily spoken Arabic that the children are brought up on, if they actually have any Arabic spoken in the home at all as they are growing up in their formative years. Sometimes the primary caretakers, for not to generalize too greatly, but for at least a percentage of our students, their primary caretakers do not speak Arabic or English as their primary language. So many of our children grow up hearing English or Arabic in more of a broken form, as opposed to a first language. Now, according to, again, Misti Savage-Shepherd, and in her research, It will take a child 6 to 12 years to catch up with other native English speakers. If a child doesn't have a primary mother tongue, it would potentially even take them longer because they don't have a primary language to transfer the second language to. And this is the situation that many of our students who are coming up into the middle school are just reaching. They're just reaching the point where their academic English, as opposed to their conversational English, is an area where they are starting to catch up. But they really need our focus to make that move upwards significantly, especially during the grades 6 through 8, prior to meeting grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, where we have seen a trend of students starting to really develop, boys and girls, but significantly boys, in terms of their academic English language. In terms of our gifted and talented students, I have a couple of quotes I'd like to mention. This does not apply directly to our school, but there is an abundant amount of evidence that shows that even with the best of intentions, regular classroom teachers adapt no more than 20% of the curriculum for their brightest students. Simply bringing bright students together will not accomplish the goals intended. And this comes from Bill and Ochin Kusuma Powell in a famous article called Count Me In, which is posted on the U.S. State Department site. Now, the Clearinghouse on Disabilities and Gifted Education states it would appear that merely grouping gifted students together without at the same time changing the content and the instructional strategies will not yield much in the way of benefits. A well-constructed program that brings gifted students together and provides them with an intellectually stimulating and important set of ideas, together with giving them practice to use their own ability to find and problem solve, seems to yield very tangible results. The program that I'm about to explain, I believe, help both of these demographics to do much greater success at Cutler Academy. This rationale. This system is flexible enough to meet individual student needs while allowing the school to meet scheduling requirements, which of course it has, and generally does put in place prior to June or July of the year to come. Number two, it gives teachers greater instructional options, including a requirement for team teaching structures. It does mean that you can highlight the strengths of each of the individuals who are teaching and minimize the weaknesses, which does bring a great value to the students. Additionally, you have two different personalities. You can connect with the students in a variety of ways. Team teaching is definitely an advantage for many of our children. And finally, number three, this allows students to work within their zone of proximal development more frequently, leading towards greater comfort and engagement in the classroom. In other words, we can meet children at the level that they are at on a much greater basis, as opposed to having them have to reach the levels that we have required of them. This year, we have laid the groundwork for what we hope will come in the future. Now, originally, and previously, many units that we would have at the school would have a gifted level, a mainstream level, and an ELL or an ESL level of support, with one teacher providing that support. This year, we've taken it beyond having extension activities and remediation activities to our first unit of the year, which utilized two teachers and team teaching to provide heterogeneous groupings for the students. The TAP students, or the gifted and talented students, were not always the leaders, but were divided among groups so that they could be coaches for other students in focusing upon stories of the world and trying to figure out, as archaeologists, what was important to these communities based upon their stories. And this was very higher level thinking, and the gifted and talented students did a wonderful job. In the final unit of the year, in grade 6 English, we then plan to move to homogeneous groupings. In this situation, we'll be reading two totally different types of content, both under the same unit. The Westing game is a unit which probably is around a 7th grade reading level, which most of the higher level readers will be reading, including many of the gifted and talented students. For those students who are struggling readers, we'll be using shorter mysteries, 2, 3, 5-page, 10-page mysteries, studying the exact same material, but in a smaller dosage, so that we can also target their individual needs. Again, two teachers are working in correspondence with one another so that we can better meet the needs of each individual student. Now, this model takes us into next year, where an even smoother model, a planned model, can come into effect. So there are 5 classes in the Cutler Academy 6th grade, or any grade actually at Cutler Academy. Within this, next year, we would like to have one homogeneous class with no major special needs. Certainly none of the ELL, ESL students or the gifted and talented students in this area. The heterogeneous groups, these will be completely mixed. Students will be mixed with ESL students sitting right alongside gifted and talented students, sitting right alongside other students with other special needs. Now that's the organization. That gives us 4 classes, and since the general scheduling at Qatar Academy is to have 2 classes at the same time in grade 6 and 2 classes at the same time, the 2 other classes at the same time, and then a 5th class that doesn't meet with anyone else. The 5th class would be the 6E class in this situation, the one class that does not meet at the same time, so that you'll see in just one moment, more teachers can focus upon more needs. So the classroom organization would look like this. There'd be one heterogeneous classroom. This would be 6A, B, C, or D, as I just showed. There'd be another heterogeneous classroom, and then there'd be a 3rd classroom in the middle. This is an extra room with a differentiation specialist for daily pull-out or weekly pull-out assistance. Now this isn't pull-out in the sense that these students just go in here to work on something completely undetached and something non-related to what's going on in class. All 3 teachers would plan together for the entire week. Everyone would have their role. Everyone would be working on the same unit and the same goals. But in this situation, this would give 3 teachers, so that, if nothing else, there were significantly more people to help out the children, but it also gives you more freedom. So then, if there was any type of a special situation, those 3 teachers could come over for the special activities, and they could split into homogeneous groups, whatever those might be. Gifted and talented could go into a separate group with one teacher. The ELL could go into another group with another teacher. Obviously, the students in the middle could either form a 3rd group or we go into one of the other 2 groups. Boys and girls could be split, or any number. In fact, interests could be met. Students could choose a book or 3 different books. And in that situation, again, there's greater student choice, creating a situation that's going to be much more powerful for the students. Now, as I move outside of the classroom, I hope that you recognize how that student-friendly model will allow for the teachers to adapt to the child's needs on a much more consistent basis, much greater than any schedule could do, because often schedules require give and take, students having to come to a new room, a lot of moving about, a break in routine, and this would just be the routine. Okay, moving to after-school activities for ELL students. I found this year, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose, that utilizing the tutors that many of our ELL students have at homes, or the parents who are working diligently with them, is an invaluable partner in this educational relationship. Though, has to be clear in language and intention. There has to be continuing so that they can practice almost like repetitions in a basketball game or a basketball practice over and over. Finally, having some type of course communication tool, like Moodle or Blackboard, gives the teacher the ability to speak directly to the parents or to the tutor, as well as to be able to track exactly how the student is doing. In this situation, the last assignment that I just showed definitely piqued the interest of the student and kept them involved and kept them organized. I can see through this graph that there are numerous hits on a weekly basis, just making sure that assignments were submitted, and then I was able to directly communicate. Great job, keep it up, and give grade advice as well, and saying, this is what you've gotten, this is what you need to do to improve. For gifted and talented, it's important to set creative, open-ended tasks. Allocate role of coaches, like we just mentioned we did in the first unit of the year. Expect high performance, doing one's best, revising and improving, and work even when it is better than that turned in by most other classmates. And this sometimes is something difficult to communicate in front of the class. But I believe technology is going to be one of the answers that I'm going to point out in a moment, where we can communicate to students without doing it publicly. Finally, I do believe there are many, many ways to extend students, especially the gifted and talented, but all students, technologically. As you can see from this e-portfolio, there are so many tools now, Web 2.0 tools, individual tools, that students themselves very greatly enjoy, and will definitely give them challenges both technologically as well as conceptually. This essentially ends my conversation, dear board and heads of department. I do hope that this presentation has shown some of the techniques that we as a school can use to meet the needs of 2 of our largest demographics. And I do hope that our trial next year of the organizational structure that I've introduced, and that I definitely give credit to Gary and Allison Holsten for founding, will help us to meet the needs of our 2 major demographics
and to begin to focus upon all students.